The steel bars of my cell are cold against my forehead as I press my face between them, wondering if this is how my story ends. My name is John Randall. I'm 71 years old, and according to the internet, I'm a monster who attacks children. 3 weeks ago, I was sentenced to 6 months in county jail for assault on a minor. The video went viral, millions of views of me standing over a 17-year-old kid with a broken arm, looking like exactly the kind of bitter old man who takes his rage out on innocent teenagers. What the video doesn't show is the 30 seconds before, when that innocent teenager was trying to steal the only thing keeping me alive. But I'm getting ahead of myself. It started on a Tuesday morning in Riverside Park, Sacramento. I was taking my morning walk with Bella, my 3-year-old German Shepherd mix. She's not just a pet, she's a service dog, trained to detect when my PTSD episodes are building, when the flashbacks are coming, when I'm about to spiral into the kind of panic attack that used to leave me catatonic for hours. The red vest she wears says, "Service dog, do not pet," in big white letters. Most people respect that. Most people understand that she's working, that she's keeping me functional, that she's the difference between me living a semi-normal life and becoming another veteran suicide statistic. But not everyone gets it, especially not kids who think the rules don't apply to them. I was sitting on a bench, feeding Bella treats while she performed her morning routine, checking my stress levels, monitoring my breathing, staying alert for triggers. It's a ritual that keeps me grounded, keeps the war from bleeding into my civilian life. That's when Marcus Henderson rolled up on his mountain bike. 17 years old, privileged white kid from the suburbs, riding a bike that probably cost more than my monthly disability check. He saw Bella and his eyes lit up like he'd found a new toy. "Cool dog, old man. Can I pet her?" "She's a service dog," I said, not looking up from my newspaper. "She's working. Come on, just for a second. She's so pretty." "No, she can't be distracted while she's working." Most people would have accepted that and moved on. Marcus wasn't most people. "What's she even doing? You look fine to me." I felt my chest tighten, the first warning sign that my anxiety was spiking. Bella immediately moved closer, pressing against my leg, her training kicking in. "She helps me with PTSD. And right now, you're making it worse." Marcus laughed. "PTSD? From what? Vietnam? Dude, that was like 1,000,000 years ago. Get over it." The words hit me like shrapnel. Get over it. Like 47 years of nightmares, panic attacks, and survivor's guilt was something I could just decide to stop experiencing. Bella sensed my distress escalating. She moved to position herself between me and Marcus, a protective stance she'd been trained to take when I was having an episode. "Whatever," Marcus said. "I'm petting the dog." He reached for Bella despite my protests, despite her service vest, despite every social and legal boundary that protected working animals. When I stood up to block him, he got angry. "Move, old man, it's just a fucking dog. Don't touch her." "What are you going to do about it?" That's when he grabbed Bella's collar and tried to pull her away from me. The world exploded, not metaphorically, literally. In my mind, I was back in the Mekong Delta, 1968, watching my squad get torn apart by Viet Cong mortar fire. I could smell the cordite, hear the screaming, feel the heat from burning huts. Bella was my anchor to reality. Without her, I was drowning in flashbacks, lost in a war that ended before Marcus was born. I shoved him, hard. Harder than I meant to, harder than I should have, but not harder than someone trying to steal my lifeline deserved. Marcus went down, his bike clattering across the sidewalk. I heard something snap his arm, hitting the concrete at the wrong angle. By the time the fog cleared from my head, there were people everywhere. Someone had called 911. Someone else was filming with their phone. Marcus was on the ground, crying about his arm, playing the victim for an audience that saw exactly what he wanted them to see. A crazy old veteran attacking an innocent kid. "He just pushed me for no reason," Marcus sobbed. "I was just asking to pet his dog." The video started recording after he hit the ground. It showed me standing over him, Bella at my side, looking like a predator who'd just taken down his prey. It didn't show Marcus grabbing my service dog. It didn't show him trying to separate me from the one thing keeping me sane. It didn't show the 30 seconds that explained everything. The police arrived 6 minutes later. By then, Marcus had his story locked in. The crazy old veteran had attacked him unprovoked, probably having some kind of PTSD episode, definitely dangerous to the community. "Officer," Marcus said, still on the ground despite paramedics telling him his arm wasn't broken, "he just went psycho on me. I was being friendly, asking about his dog, and he completely lost it." The witnesses backed him up. They'd seen the end result, not the cause. They'd seen an old man standing over a teenager, and their brains filled in the blanks with the most obvious narrative. I tried to explain about Bella, about my PTSD, about what Marcus had done. But who was going to believe the word of a mentally ill veteran against a clean-cut kid with a broken arm? The video went viral before I was even processed at the county jail. "Violent vet attacks teen in park" was trending on Twitter within hours. The comments were brutal people calling me a psychopath, a danger to society, a perfect example of why veterans with PTSD shouldn't be allowed in public. My court-appointed attorney was a kid fresh out of law school who seemed more interested in his phone than my case. "Look, Mr. Randall, the evidence is pretty clear. There's video of you assaulting a minor. Your best bet is to plead guilty, show remorse, maybe get the sentence reduced to community service. But you don't understand what really happened. What I understand is that juries don't like defendants who blame their victims, especially when the victim is a teenager and you're a veteran with documented mental health issues. My PTSD doesn't make me violent. The video suggests otherwise." The trial was a nightmare. Marcus took the stand in a sling he didn't need, telling his version of events with the practiced sincerity of someone who'd grown up getting out of trouble with his parents. His father, Congressman Robert Henderson, sat in the front row, radiating the kind of political authority that made judges nervous about seeming soft on crime. I testified about Bella's training, about why service dogs can't be petted or distracted, about what happens to me when I'm separated from her during an episode. But every time I mentioned my PTSD, I could see the jury's faces change. To them, I wasn't a victim, I was a ticking time bomb who'd finally gone off. The prosecutor painted me as a dangerous veteran who'd used my military training to assault an innocent child. He talked about the epidemic of veteran violence, the need to protect communities from unstable former soldiers, the importance of holding people accountable regardless of their service record. "PTSD is not an excuse for violence," he said in his closing argument. "Mental illness is not a license to hurt children. John Randall chose to assault Marcus Henderson, and he must face the consequences of that choice." The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. 6 months in county jail, 2 years probation, mandatory anger management classes. As they led me away in shackles, I heard Marcus's father talking to reporters outside the courthouse. "Justice has been served. No one veteran or civilian is above the law when it comes to protecting our children." The media coverage was relentless. I was the poster child for dangerous veterans, the cautionary tale about PTSD and public safety. Veterans advocacy groups distanced themselves from my case, afraid that supporting me would make them look like they endorsed violence against children. Bella was placed in a shelter while I served my sentence. The thought of her sitting in a cage, confused and abandoned, was worse than any punishment the court could impose. County jail is no place for a 71-year-old man with PTSD. The noise, the crowds, the constant threat of violence, it was like being back in combat, except the enemy was boredom and despair instead of bullets and bombs. I had panic attacks daily. Without Bella to ground me, the flashbacks came in waves. I'd wake up screaming, thinking I was back in Vietnam, disturbing my cellmate who was already serving time for actual violence. The other inmates mostly left me alone. Word had gotten around that I was the kid beater from the viral video, but most of them had bigger problems than an old man's reputation. 3 weeks into my sentence, something changed. I was in the common area, trying to read a book and failing because my hands wouldn't stop shaking when the guard called my name. "Randall?" You've got visitors." I assumed it was my daughter, who'd been coming twice a week, despite the embarrassment of having a father in jail for assaulting a teenager. But when I got to the visiting room, I saw two people I didn't recognize: a man in an expensive suit and a woman with the kind of badge that meant federal law enforcement. "Mr. Randall," the man said, "I'm Federal Judge William Chen. This is Special Agent Sarah Martinez from the FBI. We need to talk." My first thought was that I was in deeper trouble than I'd realized. Federal charges, maybe, or some connection between my case and a larger investigation. Am I under arrest? No, Mr. Randall, you're not under arrest. In fact, we're here to discuss the possibility of your immediate release. I don't understand. Judge Chen opened a briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. 3 days ago, the FBI received an anonymous tip about your case. Someone suggested we look at the full security camera footage from Riverside Park. Security cameras. The park has a surveillance system. 12 cameras covering all the major pathways and recreational areas. The footage from your incident was never reviewed by local police because they had an eyewitness account and cell phone video they considered sufficient. Agent Martinez leaned forward. "Mr. Randall, we've seen what really happened. All of it. From the moment Marcus Henderson approached you until the moment you defended yourself and your service dog." The words hit me like a physical blow. "You saw." "We saw Marcus Henderson repeatedly ignore your request to leave your service dog alone. We saw him grab Bella's collar and attempt to pull her away from you while you were clearly experiencing a medical episode. We saw you push him only after he'd committed what amounts to theft of medical equipment." Judge Chen spread photographs across the table. High-resolution images captured from the security footage, showing Marcus grabbing Bella, me trying to protect her, the moment of contact that sent him sprawling. "Mr. Randall, what happened in that park wasn't assault. It was self-defense. Defense of your service animal, which under federal law is equivalent to defense of medical equipment. But the trial was based on incomplete evidence," Agent Martinez said. "Evidence that was deliberately suppressed by the district attorney's office." Suppressed? Congressman Henderson used his influence to ensure the security footage was never reviewed. He pressured the DA to rush your case to trial before anyone could discover evidence that contradicted his son's version of events. I felt like I was going to be sick. So this whole thing was a cover-up, a conspiracy to protect a congressman's son from facing consequences for interfering with a service animal and harassing a disabled veteran. Judge Chen pulled out another document. "Mr. Randall, I'm here to inform you that your conviction has been overturned by federal court order. You're being released immediately with a full apology from the Department of Justice." "What about Marcus?" "Marcus Henderson is being charged with federal civil rights violations. Interfering with a service animal is a federal crime, as is filing a false police report in a case involving a disabled veteran." Agent Martinez smiled for the first time since the conversation began. "And Congressman Henderson is under investigation for obstruction of justice, conspiracy to deprive civil rights, and abuse of public office." I couldn't process what they were telling me. 3 weeks ago, I was a convicted child abuser facing the end of my reputation and my freedom. Now, I was a victim of political corruption being apologized to by federal judges. "There's something else," Agent Martinez said. "The security footage shows that this wasn't the first time Marcus has targeted service animals. We've identified at least 3 other incidents where he harassed disabled individuals and their service dogs. You weren't his first victim, you were just the first one who fought back. How is that possible? Rich kid, connected father, local police who look the other way. Marcus has been getting away with this behavior for years because nobody wanted to cross his family." Judge Chen started packing up his briefcase. "Mr. Randall, a car is waiting outside to take you home. Your service dog has been returned to your house. And there will be a significant settlement from the city to compensate you for wrongful imprisonment." "What about my record?" "Expunged. As far as the law is concerned, this conviction never happened." I was released an hour later, walking out of county jail into a media circus that was even bigger than the one that had condemned me 3 weeks earlier. But this time, the narrative was different. Veteran vindicated in viral video case was the new headline. Congressman's son charged in service dog attack. The reporters who'd painted me as a dangerous criminal were now portraying me as a hero who'd stood up to privileged corruption. The same politicians who'd used my case to talk tough about veteran violence were now calling for investigations into civil rights violations. My daughter was waiting in the car, crying with relief. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I should have believed you. I should have fought harder for you. You couldn't have known. But I should have. I know you. I know you wouldn't hurt a child without a reason." The drive home was surreal. 3 weeks in jail had felt like 3 years, and the world outside looked different somehow. Brighter, but also more fragile, like I was seeing it through glass that might shatter at any moment. Bella was waiting for me at home, tail wagging, acting like I'd only been gone for a few minutes instead of 3 weeks. She immediately went into working mode, checking my stress levels, positioning herself between me and potential threats, doing the job Marcus Henderson had tried to prevent her from doing. The media attention was overwhelming. Every major news outlet wanted an interview. Veterans groups that had distanced themselves from my case were now apologizing and offering support. Politicians were calling for reform of the justice system, better protections for service animals, accountability for prosecutorial misconduct. But the most important call came 2 days after my release. "Mr. Randall, this is Dr. Elena Rodriguez from the VA hospital. I saw your story on the news, and I wanted to reach out because we have several other veterans who've been harassed while using their service animals." "How many?" "More than you might think. Most of them don't report it because they're afraid of exactly what happened to you being seen as violent or unstable if they defend themselves." "So this is a pattern?" "It's an epidemic. People who don't understand service animals, who think veterans are dangerous, who feel entitled to pet or distract working dogs regardless of the consequences." Dr. Rodriguez paused. "Mr. Randall, would you be willing to speak at a conference? Share your story with other veterans, help them understand their rights, show them that they don't have to accept harassment?" A month later, I was standing in front of 300 veterans and their families, telling my story to people who understood exactly what Bella meant to me, exactly what Marcus had tried to take away. The hardest part, I told them, wasn't being convicted of a crime I didn't commit. It wasn't the jail time or the media attention or the death threats from people who believed I was a child abuser. I looked out at the audience, seeing my own struggles reflected in their faces. The hardest part was losing faith in the system I'd served for 27 years, believing that justice was just a word, that truth didn't matter, that a veteran's word would never be worth more than a politician's son's lies. "But you were vindicated," someone called out. The truth came out. The truth came out because someone with power decided it should come out. If that federal judge hadn't ordered the investigation, if the FBI hadn't reviewed the footage, I'd still be in jail, and Marcus Henderson would still be harassing disabled veterans. I gestured to Bella, who was sitting calmly at my side in her red service vest. "Our service animals aren't pets. They're medical equipment. They're the difference between functioning and falling apart, between living and just surviving. When someone interferes with them, they're not just being rude, they're potentially putting our lives at risk." After the conference, I was approached by a young veteran named David Chen. He looked like he was barely old enough to drink, but he walked with the careful gait of someone carrying invisible wounds. "Mr. Randall, my service dog was stolen last month, right out of my yard. Police said it was just a property crime, that I should file an insurance claim." "Did you report it as theft of medical equipment?" "I didn't know that was an option." I gave him Agent Martinez's card. "Call her. Tell her John Randall sent you. She's building a database of service animal crimes, looking for patterns." "You think my case is connected to yours?" "I think there are a lot more Marcus Hendersons out there than anyone wants to admit, and I think it's time they faced consequences." 6 months later, Agent Martinez called with an update. The investigation had expanded to cover 17 states and over 200 cases of service animal harassment or theft. Marcus Henderson had been sentenced to 2 years in federal prison and ordered to pay restitution to all his victims. Congressman Henderson had resigned in disgrace and was facing his own federal charges. The district attorney who'd prosecuted my case had been suspended pending an ethics investigation. "Mr. Randall," Agent Martinez said, "your case broke this whole thing open. If you hadn't fought back, if you hadn't insisted on your innocence even when everyone said you were guilty, none of these other victims would have gotten justice. I didn't do anything special. I just refused to accept that defending my service dog was a crime. Sometimes that's all it takes. One person who refuses to accept injustice, who keeps telling the truth even when nobody wants to hear it." I'm back to my morning walks in Riverside Park now, with Bella at my side in her service vest. People recognize me sometimes from the news coverage, from the viral video that first made me infamous and then vindicated me. Most of them are supportive, understanding. They give Bella space to work, respect her vest, treat us both with the dignity we deserve. But sometimes I see the skeptical looks, the people who remember the first video but not the follow-up, who still think I'm a violent veteran who got away with assault on a technicality. I understand their confusion. The truth is complicated, and viral videos rarely tell the whole story. But I'm not angry at them anymore. I'm angry at the system that created the conditions for my story to happen in the first place. The system that assumes veterans with PTSD are dangerous rather than vulnerable. The system that protects privilege over justice, wealth over truth, politics over accountability. My lawyer is working on legislation to strengthen protections for service animals and their handlers, federal charges for any interference with a working service animal, mandatory training for law enforcement on disability rights, better oversight of prosecutors who rush cases to trial without reviewing all available evidence. It won't undo what happened to me, or to David Chen, or to the dozens of other veterans who've been victimized by people like Marcus Henderson. But maybe it will prevent the next veteran from spending 3 weeks in jail for defending their right to exist in public with their service animal. The most important victory, though, is the simplest one. Bella and I can walk through the park without fear, without looking over our shoulders, without wondering if today will be the day someone tries to take her away from me. She's wearing her red vest with pride, doing her job, keeping me grounded in reality instead of lost in the past. And if anyone tries to interfere with that again, they'll discover that the justice system, when it works, properly protects veterans and their service animals from people who think their convenience matters more than our survival. The viral video that made me famous was 30 seconds of lies that nearly destroyed my life. But the truth, when it finally came out, was stronger than any lie politicians could tell. Sometimes that's all you can hope for, that the truth eventually will be stronger than the lie. Even if it takes a federal investigation to prove it,